welcome back to NAMI Maine Talks. My name is Ambrose Ward, and I'm the Marketing and Media Specialist here at NAMI Maine. Before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to just give a quick thank you and a quick promo to Camden Blum at The Simple Emotions. I'm currently wearing one of his designs of sweatshirts, and he also has t-shirts available on his website. You guys can go and check that out, and half of the proceeds will be donated back to NAMI Maine. But let's get into the conversation. I'm actually here today joined with the creators of the Community Plate with Margaret Hathaway and Karl Schatz. So, guys, do you want to give us a quick little explanation of what the Community Plate is?
Sure. Yeah. So Community Plate we're a nonprofit based here in Maine. We started in 2023, and the work was born out of two statewide community cookbooks that we published in 2020 and 2022. The first one as part of Maine's bicentennial celebration in 2020. And these were collections of family recipes and family stories from people all over the state. And when the books came out, which was the first book came out in the middle of the pandemic, 2020, we saw and we felt ourselves how the recipes and really the stories, people's family food stories that were depicted and told in the pages of the book, fostered connections between people of all different backgrounds and all different walks of life. And it sort of didn't matter what your personal beliefs were or family history. You could identify and really connect with other people through reading their family stories about food and cooking their recipes. And we saw that sort of play out. And in 2023, as the pandemic began to recede and we could get together for in-person gatherings, we envisioned a series of community potluck suppers that would take place across the state, that would be sort of a fusion of traditional community potluck with storytelling. And out of that idea, Community Plate and the program are sort of the primary program that we do now, which is we call the Story Sharing Potluck Supper. That's where it all started.
And since June of 2023, when we started Community Plate, we've had 42 suppers in 15 of Maine's counties.
Oh, wow.
And they've ranged in size from 14 people in a church basement in Waterville to 100 people in a hall in Portland. So it goes kind of the whole gamut.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I want to talk to you guys briefly. So you mentioned that this idea kind of came about with your cookbooks, but it came about kind of around the issue of COVID and the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we know, even though that's in the rear view as of right now, people still find themselves feeling isolated and lonely. And I mean, especially in Maine, where we're a very rural state, we're very spread out. We're not very close together in this state. And I love what you said about it's something that's been around for such a long time. Humans have always gathered together to eat and share stories, and that's something that's been along ever since medieval times and even before.
Yeah. When we started, it was right. The first supper we did was shortly after the former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy came out with his advisory about the epidemic of loneliness that was sort of gripping the United States. And we saw this as one possible response, a way to get people together. And especially in rural Maine, especially in rural places where people are, live far apart. Sometimes your nearest neighbor may be, a mile away, certainly not, walking distance. And there is a growing, well, it's not growing. I guess it's the opposite of growing, a shrinking availability of third places, and places where communities can gather, where people can come together and meet with their neighbors, have conversations. And that's something that's just been on the decline for not just since the pandemic and a sort of, people not being afraid to go out and meet neighbors, but just, places where they could do it. And so we see this as a way to provide that space for people.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
there are studies after studies that show that just like acquaintances, just small, not deep conversation, even just casual conversations are what buoy up our mental health.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
little interactions. And when we don't have them, when we're not to get on a soapbox, but when we're like on our screens all the time, when more and more people consume the bulk of their meals alone,
Yeah.
um, that is really detrimental to our mental health. And I think we see the fallout from that all the time. And this just seems like a very unthreatening way to give people some scaffolding to reconnect and take care of themselves
Mhm.
and each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And I think just that aspect of sharing food together, it's very communal. It kind of transcends political boundaries and social differences and everything like that. And it's a great way for people to just come together, eat, and talk with each other.
Absolutely.
We like to joke that, and this is something that we noticed in our first cookbook, that my very conservative, politically conservative, late grandmother and Carl's pretty politically
Progressive.
progressive
Yeah.
living mother would have very little to talk about in common except our children and cookies and recipes.
Yeah.
There's always like food is a way that you can really open up a conversation. And the biggest conflicts are like, do you like cilantro? Things like
Yeah.
Chocolate versus vanilla.
right.
You
They're
know?
Yeah.
they're playful conflicts. They're not the heavy things because we get out of practice with having just casual conversations, and you never will be able to have the deeper conversations that we all need unless you remember how to have the easy stuff, the easy ones. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
And I love what you had mentioned about how being connected and feeling that connection not only with your community but with your peers, it's so influential to mental health. We talk about here at NAMI Maine all the time, because we're such a rural state and we're so spread out, that feeling of isolation and loneliness can really impact a lot of Mainers. And having this types of resource that really fosters this connection and fosters a way for a community to come together and just disregard everything that's going on in politics, everything that's going on socially, and come together and speak together and listen to stories and eat some food together. It's really powerful.
Yeah, we see a lot of just these really simple connections that people make is sort of the serendipity that happens at the suppers where you meet someone you would never have expected to meet, have a conversation with someone you wouldn't have expected to have a conversation with, and find some small thing in common. It might be a food, it might be where you grew up, but all these little things. But it's that sort of serendipity that then makes you feel a connection to something bigger than yourself,
Yeah.
which then gives you optimism, a feeling of optimism, a feeling of being more connected to your community. And all of those feelings are positive feelings. They all, trigger that sort of that response, that chemical response in our brain that gives us that little bit of lift, and we see that happening multiple times at every supper we do.
And one thing, we didn't mention this in the sort of brief description of what we do, but after each supper, we gather the recipes that people have brought and we make a tiny community cookbook that's distributed to everyone who came to the supper. And in the back, we do a little survey after the meal just to let people give us feedback about what we could do better. And we always ask, if you made a connection, can you just tell us a little bit about it? And in the back of the cookbook, we print some of the connections that people have made, not with their names, no identifying anything,
Yeah.
but just as a way for people to either see themselves or just remember, have an artifact of the good time that they had together, and to remember some of the stories that
Yeah.
that people brought. And some of those connections are amazing. Like one from an early supper was like, someone complimented a pie crust, and the woman who brought the pie said, "Oh, just come over to my house. I'll teach you how to make it." A total stranger. And then
Yeah.
went on to bake together.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like little things like that can do wonders for the way we all move through the world.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
on so many levels.
And sometimes it's as simple as, I found someone to hike with, or I found someone to go fishing with. We've gotten those comments as well, which, that's fantastic.
And I mean, it's such a great way to just provide a space for people to make those connections that can go even further, like what you were saying about either going and baking together, or going fishing or hiking together. Especially with Maine, like those are very popular things. Um, but we were actually just talking about it, but I'd love to know, from your guys' experience and from what you've learned from people after these dinners, how are attendees, how are they leaving these dinners? Like, what kind of sense do they have of community and stuff like that after they leave?
Yeah. Well, so we do ask some, sort of more quantitative questions in that survey, like, did you make a connection? Do you feel more connected to your community? And we get, 85, 90%. I think it's actually 99% of people say they made a connection with someone. 88% say they feel more connected to their community. So we do have like some sort of statistics that show that it's working. But I think even more powerful than that are just like the personal stories. At one of the very early suppers that we did, um, a woman came in and sat down. She was a little bit, late. She was kind of running in, and she
Mhm.
sat down right across from me. And I asked her, what brought her to that particular supper. And she said, I came because I'm lonely. And it was the first time I'd ever heard someone say it out loud. We
Mhm.
sort of were doing this in a very sort of hypothetical way, knowing that it existed, but not, really having anyone come out and tell us, I'm lonely.
Yeah.
And immediately the woman sitting next to her, offered her phone number, said, let's go get coffee tomorrow. A third woman connected with the two of them at that supper. And the next week, they went to the mayoral debate together in Waterville, and then continued to do things together, the three of them,
Yeah.
and became really, really close friends. And a year later, they all came together to another supper we were doing in nearby Skowhegan
Hmm.
to celebrate the completion of one of the women completed her dissertation, and they were celebrating that.
Well, and I
Oh,
think one
wow.
thing you didn't mention is the three women came from very different demographics.
Yeah.
The woman who came in and said that she was lonely had moved to Maine to be close to her grandchildren, so she was older. And the woman who immediately chatted with her was the academic who was probably she was
Maybe
probably
in
in
her-
her late 30s,
Yeah.
finishing her dissertation. And then the third woman is an artist who had recently moved to Waterville. Because she found Portland to be it was getting a little bit too hectic for her. And and she was probably
In mid
in her
40s.
mid 40s or
Yeah.
50s. So
Mhm.
it was three
Great.
different generations of women,
Yeah.
very different backgrounds, and yet they found things in common and have continued to stay friends, which is really, I mean, our work here is done.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, having that sense of having that way that not only people can come together in the community, but also having different generations come together and find that common ground among eating together and sharing stories. I think that's really impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear when we get young people, sometimes it's just our children who are there, but sometimes it's, we do get people, children are welcome, so we get whole families coming to these things. And we hear from, people in the older generation all the time what like a delight it is to sit and
Yeah.
talk to young people and hear about their school experience or their extracurricular experience or whatever it is that they're doing. And it can be really life affirming for older generation to have that kind of interaction with the younger generations.
Well, and also, I mean, just this morning, our daughter, who's a senior in high school, we have a supper coming up on Saturday, and our daughter was asking if a particular storyteller, an older woman, would be there because she hadn't seen her in a while and just was,
Yeah.
missing her and sort of thinking about her. And this is we have three daughters, and of our three daughters, this is the one who is least of a potluck goer. So
Yeah.
Um, but she still has made that connection with Phyllis
Yeah.
and is really, looking forward to seeing her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So you guys have mentioned these speakers that you have at these events. I actually wanted to get a sense. So what do these speakers usually talk about, or is it a different topic about each dinner?
so each dinner has a theme that
Mhm.
we team up with other nonprofits. The venue is always arranged by another nonprofit that we go into
Yeah.
in the
So
community.
yeah, so a part of our model is collaborating
Yeah.
with another local organization.
Mhm.
Themes and so we develop the theme in coordination with that other organization, and it's usually connected to their mission or the location we're doing the supper or the time of year or something like that. And then we have storytellers.
And sometimes
Yeah.
it's, sort of playful, like the theme will be Sappily Ever After, and the stories will range from like, you know, love to maple syrup tapping your trees. It can kind of go across the board. Some are a little bit more serious. And sometimes the storytellers talk about things that are really sort of heart-wrenching. We had a supper in Norway last March, was it?
Yeah.
And the theme was spring ahead because it was right around when we set the clocks. And one of the storytellers was the first time he had told a story, and he talked about his father's suicide and moving through that, the springing ahead of his own journey
Yeah.
of healing. And that actually someone had lost his son to suicide, and the two men met and like held each other at the end of the supper, and it was really, really a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
So sometimes stories are very intense, and
Mhm.
sometimes stories are
Light.
lighter, and more
Yeah.
playful. It really depends on what theme we set
And who the storytellers
who the
are
storytellers
and
are.
how they interpret the theme. But it's
Yeah.
almost always, first person, personal narrative storytelling. So it's people telling their story, their personal story, and then what ends up happening during that part of the event is you have the entire, group there who has come together for this dinner and over the course of dinner been making individual connections with each other through we put out story prompts to provide scaffolding for conversation, and so they're having conversations around the table sharing stories with each other, and then at the end you have these storytellers who get up and sort of perform, entertain the whole group together. And so everyone has this very collective experience of connection
Yeah.
where they're all connecting, simultaneously with someone who's up there sharing their story with them. And it can be very powerful, as Margaret
Yeah.
just described.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. And so before we move into kind of closing remarks and seeing how you guys want to eventually kind of see how it grows, I wanted to ask, have you guys noticed a difference in yourselves after working with this and starting this program?
Yeah, I think um we're in some challenging times as a country, and I think and a planet, challenging times
Yeah.
across the board.
Yeah.
But I think every time we have one of these suppers, I leave feeling optimistic and feeling like human connection is just waiting to be made. We all have something in common. We all have the desire for a better world and a peaceful world and for connection. And I feel like every time I'm leaving a supper, every time I'm planning a supper, I, it just fills me up with optimism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the questions we ask in our survey, did the supper make you feel more generally optimistic? And
Mhm.
majority of people say yes. I actually, I think, we all have our own personal struggles with mental health. And I guess it was 2 summers ago, we lost our dog, and it was a really traumatic experience for me. And the Saturday after we lost him, we had a supper scheduled. And
Okay.
So the way the suppers work is I kind of work at I'm kind of the MC of
Yeah.
the event, and so I'm up there really leading and facilitating this supper and the storytellers and the event. And I was so depressed and so just feeling, sad because of the loss of our dog. And I think at one point I said, to Margaret, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can get up in front of a room of people and, pretend to be happy or
Yeah.
pretend to be, optimistic. And it was really hard, but we were committed. We had to we had, made a commitment to do this. So we went and we did it. And it turned out to be like exactly what I needed. It turned out to be, being in a room full of people who all, wanted to have conversations. And, it never came up. I never, sort of said this, I'm not feeling, I'm
Hmm.
depressed for this reason, but just having people to talk to, just
Yeah.
having, a room full of people who were all there for the reason of wanting to make connections with each other. And I left feeling better. I mean, still sad, obviously, but
Mhm.
feeling like that it was what it was exactly what I needed.
It can be healing to just
Yeah.
be in
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah,
with people,
it was a
in
healing
community with
experience.
people.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, and I mean, we all, I know myself personally, I'm always like glued to my phone with the news, something small as in your community, not focusing on everything else going on in the world, but focusing on who are you being present with and who are you sitting around. I think that's very powerful and it can really help de-stress you and take away a lot of those burdens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we have people turn off their phones at the
Yeah.
beginning of the meal, and really encourage people to be present. We talk a lot about attention and generosity and practicing
As
listening.
sort of the guidelines
Yeah,
as we set the
Yeah.
table for the
for
evening.
how
Yeah.
we sort of, ask people to be their best selves and be really welcoming and engaged with their neighbors. And people are really happy to do it. I think given the opportunity, people are happy to do it.
And at the end of the suppers, we have just a woman who's come to a lot of suppers wrote a sort of poem of gratitude that we read.
Uh-huh.
And it's sort of like, sort of a secular grace. It's just like a thank you to, the universe for putting us here and to each other for being there and showing up. And it really lands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody is just looking for a moment to say like, hi, I
Yeah.
see you, I hear
Yeah.
you,
Thank
you
you
hear
for
me,
thank
thank you.
yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing something of yourself with me. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I love the program and I love what you guys have been doing. And I wanted to see with Community Plate and how it's gone over the past few years, do you guys have any hopes or ideas for what you want to do in the future?
So many hopes.
Any ideas?
I'm sure.
Yeah. So right now, a couple of things. We're working on a shareable toolkit of the program.
Oh yeah.
So for other communities, because we right now so far, like all the suppers we've done, we have been really, very much fully engaged in them and
Hmm.
been sort of the hosts
And
and the
literally like the
planners.
dishwashers
Yeah.
too. Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so we realized that if for this to kind of grow and expand and scale, it can't just be us. We need other people to, sort of take on the idea and the program with help, and so we're putting together this toolkit that incorporates all the different aspects of the program, the way we do things, why we do them that way, and some of the scripts we use, some of the templates we use, the story prompts that we use, and so to really give other communities the tools to put on their own supper, and however what they don't have to do it exactly the way we do it, but do it, make it their own, and do it in some way that represents their community.
So
Yeah.
we have sort of an embryonic kit right now of like 10
Yeah.
papers. And the plan is to expand it and to give different options for ways of doing things. You know, we have a real focus on sustainability. Can we talk about the new partnership? The
Oh, well,
not allowed to. Yeah, never. So scratch that.
Yeah, of course.
And our focus, you know, we focus on sustainability. We use real, you know, china that we've gotten from Goodwill.
Yeah.
We use cloth napkins and things, and that's not essential, but the way we do it is very, very thought through, and we have sort of a intentional and kind of a methodology behind all of it. But we do want to expand the idea so that people can do things in their own ways. So the big plan for the coming year is to work on that kit and to try to build it out, and then to work with communities to beta test it for us.
Yeah.
To see where we can give more information, where we've kind of gone overboard, which you can probably tell we do. Another thing that we're really focused on is including more intergenerational programming. You know, the demographic is a little bit skews older, and then a few young families, and we'd like to intentionally bring more intergenerational programming together.
Yeah, especially sort of that 18 to 25, 26-year-old demographic, which we know from studies, you know, the sort of
living with two of them.
Yeah, that the loneliest demographics are, you know, the older, you know, 60 and older, but then also second is 18 to 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so we have ideas of, you know, basically how to intentionally bring those two generations together through an adapted version of our program. And so that's another thing that we're working on.
That we're trying to roll out in the later part of 2026.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, for our audience listening, if they wanted to kind of start their own type of potluck or speaker series or anything like that, what would you guys say to them as any suggestions?
Well, the first suggestion is, if we can be a resource, just reach out to us. We're very easy to reach. We're very eager to help people. It is something we're sort of incredibly passionate about.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing.
Yeah. And then just, take, baby steps, start small, start easy, whatever you can do, just to, invite 15 people to a supper, 20 people. It doesn't have to be, the whole community all at once. And then tell those 10 or 15 people to next time everyone bring a friend, and then you have 30 people or 40 people coming together, and you'll have more, community engagement, and more people, look around the room and see, who isn't there, who could be there and could be invited, and over time, make just a little bit more effort each time. Do it as easy as possible to begin, and then each time a little bit more effort, and then over time, you're going to be reaching, the people who really, hopefully over the course of it, you'll be reaching people who really need it. But
I think two things. One, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. The first community supper, like, it took us a while to hit our stride. It can be a little chaotic. It can feel like you forgot something essential, like forks, but nothing. It's a community supper. It's not,
it's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science. It's like everyone pretty much knows what to do. And then the other thing, which is something I am perpetually reminding myself, is that sometimes people who externally seem critical or grouchy that they have been dragged along to something are the people who need it the most.
Yes.
And welcoming people and meeting them where they are, which can be hard because you have to kind of like put up your own sort of filter for sometimes negativity. Um,
Yeah.
but it's those are the people who really need to be listened to. Those are the people who often sound grouchy because they don't feel heard. And like that's who you want in the room. That's who
Yeah,
you're like, the more and more suppers you do, like that's who you want to be there,
yeah,
even if they're
Yeah.
complaining
yeah.
something.
And then a very practical tip for people planning potlucks, which is I think one of the barriers to people doing this is sort of this organization, like this, level of organization that people are like stressed out about having to, do I have to like organize and tell people what to bring?
Do I need a
Yeah.
net?
Do I
Yeah.
need to like, say, okay, you bring the main course, you bring the dessert to make
Yeah.
sure, and we don't do any of that. We just tell people
Mhm.
whatever you want. And it always works out. There's always enough food. We've never run out of food at any of the suppers we've done. We've never had really too much of one thing and not enough of another. And
Yeah.
we always say if everyone brought chocolate chip cookies and we just had like a dinner of chocolate chip cookies, first of all, it's not the worst thing
Yeah,
in the
not a bad dinner.
and we'd all have like a really like funny, hilarious story to share with other people about this potluck we had where everyone brought chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
So it just opens the opportunities for great stories and great storytelling, and it takes off the pressure of feeling like, oh, I have to do this other level of organization to make sure that it's a success. And what's going to make it a success is really just getting people together to share food and share stories. It almost never goes badly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, for the viewers at home, I just wanted to say if you guys have any interest in checking out more of Community Plate, you guys have your Facebook, facebook.com/Community Plate. You guys also have your website, and you have your website with a calendar of events of your upcoming potlucks. Yeah. So make sure that you guys go and check that out. They might be coming to a community near you. And any final notes for our audience from you guys?
No, if anyone, just to feel free to reach out for us if you're in a community, want to try to do a story sharing supper, just reach out through the website, the email's on there, and we'd love to hear from you.
That's awesome. And just a little bit from NAMI Maine, you can always check out our calendar of events for upcoming trainings, events, and anything else that we have planned. And you guys always can reach out to our helpline that's accessible through this number listed on the screen, or you can always check out our website and you guys can find the number there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next episode of NAMI Maine Talks.